Nichiren's Buddhism has proved itself to be of profound value to millions of people. It was Nichiren who expressed the essence of the Lotus Sutra in a way that enables all people, regardless of their level of knowledge, to enter the gateway to enlightenment. This was a profound revolutionary development in the history of religion. While Buddhism began with the teaching of one human being who awoke to the law of life within himself, it has come to include the interpretations of that teaching by subsequent scholars and prophets. As we have said, the word Buddha originally meant enlightened one who is awakened to the eternal truth or law of life, Dharma. This truth is eternal and boundless. It is present always and everywhere. In this sense, the law of life is not the exclusive property of Shakyamuni Buddha or of the Buddhist monks. The truth is open equally to everyone. In the Buddhism described on these pages, there are no priests or gurus, no ultimate authority that decides what is correct or incorrect, what is right or wrong. In this Buddhism, the wall between priesthood and laity has been torn down, leading to a complete democratization of the practice. Because it is essentially non-dogmatic, it suits the skeptics among us. The ultimate and all-abiding law that the Buddha perceived may be another name for some people's concept of God. On the other hand, a person who cannot believe in an anthropomorphic God can see an underlying energy to the universe. The breadth of Buddhism encompasses both views and focuses on the individual. There is no external source to blame and no one to implore for salvation. In Buddhism, no God or supernatural entity plans and shapes our fates. In Western religion, you can bring yourself closer to God through your faith, but you can never become God. In Buddhism, one could never be separate from the wisdom of God because the ultimate wisdom already exists in the heart of every person. Through Buddhist practice, we seek to call forth that portion of the universal life force existing originally and eternally within, what we call Buddhahood, and manifest it by becoming a Buddha. Buddhists become aware of the existence in their innermost depths of the eternal law that permeates both the universe and the individual human being. They aim to live every day in accordance with that law. In doing so, they discover a way of living that redirects all things toward hope, value, and harmony. It is the discovery of this objective law itself, as it manifests within the individual, that creates spiritual value, not some exterior power or being. As Nichiren stated in a famous letter entitled On Attaining Buddhahood in This Lifetime, your practice of the Buddhist teachings will not relieve you of the sufferings of birth and death in the least unless you perceive the true nature of your life. If you seek enlightenment outside yourself, then you're performing even 10,000 practices and 10,000 good deeds will be in vain. It is like the case of a poor man who spends night and day counting his neighbor's wealth but gains not even a coin himself. This idea that the power to achieve happiness lies totally within can be disconcerting. It entails a radical sense of responsibility. As Daisaku Ikeda has written, society is complex and harsh, demanding that you struggle hard to survive. No one can make you happy. Everything depends on you as to whether or not you attain happiness. A human being is destined to a life of great suffering if he is weak and vulnerable to his external sufferings. But far from being a bleak, nihilistic approach to life, the Buddhist practice and philosophy are filled with hope and practical solutions to the problems of everyday existence. The philosophy described in this book is so practical that we generally do not refer to it as religion, although it is one, but as a practice, because most of the people who follow it have found it to be extremely useful. So throughout this book, although there will be numerous discussions of the theory and philosophy of modern Buddhism, the emphasis will be on how you, the individual, can use Buddhism as a powerful tool to solve the problems of daily life. As Nichiren quoted from the Lotus Sutra, no worldly affairs are ever contrary to the true reality. And furthermore, all phenomena in the universe are manifestations of the Buddhist law. In other words, daily life is the dramatic stage on which the battle for enlightenment is won or lost. Nichiren taught that common mortals, without eradicating their desires or changing their identity, could attain Buddhahood right here in this world. In an age of skepticism and widespread distrust of traditional faiths and institutions such as dynamic, self-directed religious practice becomes all the more valuable. Buddhism is essentially non-authoritarian, democratic, scientific, and based on insights obtained primarily through individual efforts towards self-perfection. But Buddhism also has immediate and far-reaching effects on the society around us. Buddhism is a way of life that makes no distinction between the individual human being and the environment in which that person lives. In its concept of the interrelatedness of all life forms in a complex web beyond complete human understanding, Buddhism has provided a spiritual and intellectual framework for environmental awareness. The Western worldview, as expounded by Christianity and Judaism, tends to anthropocentric, placing humanity at the apex of the natural order. Buddhism, on the other hand, views humankind as a part of nature, supporting and giving rise to the notion of bioethics. Since every individual is connected to everything on Earth, the destiny of our planet is influenced by the individual's actions. Modern Buddhism is also non-moralistic. In a world characterized by a great diversity of peoples, cultures, and lifestyles, Buddhism does not prescribe one way of living. There are no commandments. Buddhism accepts you exactly as you are, with all your foibles and misdemeanors, past and present. However, this does not mean you may lie, steal, or murder. Buddhism depends for its moral force not on a list of rules for behavior, but on an irresistible inner transformation. Buddhist practitioners find themselves acting more gently, compassionately, and with absolute regard